Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 2024 Council Agenda Briefing. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past and present. I would like to advise everyone that the audio and video of this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. I request everyone to please turn off your mobile phones. I remind you that audio recording of the meeting proceedings and photography within the chamber is prohibited unless prior approval has been granted, and councillors and city officers are reminded to disclose any declarations of financial interests and interests affecting impartiality, and are requested to activate their microphones when addressing the meeting. So, with that, we move to item 1, which is the declaration of opening. I declare this meeting open at 6 p.m. Items for Council. Agenda items 2, 3, 6, 7, 8.1, 8.2, 9, 11, 13 and 14 will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting to be held on 19 November 2024. That takes us to item 4, which is attendance. Item 4.1 is apologies. I have received an apology from Councillor Bronwyn Wall for this evening. Item 4.2 is approved leaves of absence, and Councillor Andre Brendera-Brandis has an approved leave of absence for the period of 23 October 2024 to 30 November 2024 inclusive. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Mayor Greg Milner, that's me. I've declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as I know several of the nominees and I've previously served on the board of one of the nominees in a voluntary capacity. Councillors, does anyone else have any interest that they wish to declare this evening? That's a no? Okay. Moving on to item 8, which is presentations. Item 8.3 is deputations, and there are no deputations this evening. That takes us to item 10, which is the draft November reports, and I'll now hand you over to the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Mike Bradford, to take you through the balance of the draft November reports. Mr. Bradford.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Item 10.1.1, City of South Perth 2025 AusSpire Community Citizen of the Year Awards, nominations, assessment and recommendations. This report seeks council approval of the award recipients for the City of South Perth 2025 AusSpire Community Citizen of the Year Award. Please note there is a confidential attachment for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Councillors, any questions for the administration on this item this evening? That's a no. Next item, please, Mr. Bradford.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Item 10.3.1, Draft Local Planning Policy, Unhosted Short-Term Rental Accommodation Advertising and Revocation of Policy 350.18, Short-Term Accommodation. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider revoking Policy 350.18, Short-Term Accommodation, and to adopt a new draft local planning policy, Unhosted Short-Term Rental Accommodation, for the purpose of advertising.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Councillors, any questions? Nope. Next item, please, Mr. Bradford.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Item 10.3.2, Proposed Change of Use Multiple Dwelling to Unhosted Short-Term Rental Accommodation, Lot 40, number 310/29, Melville Parade, South Perth. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a change of use from a multiple dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation on Lot 40, number 310/29, Melville Parade, South Perth. The item is referred to Council as the proposed land use falls outside of the delegation to officers. For the reasons outlined in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Councillors, any questions on this item? No. Next item, please. Yes. Councillor De Souza, welcome. We did the declarations of interest earlier. Did you have any declarations that you'd wish to declare?
Nothing that comes to mind, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. So we're now continuing from item 10.3.3, I think. Yes, Mr. Bradford.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Item 10.3.3, Proposed Change of Use, Multiple Dwelling to Unhosted Short-Term Rental Accommodation, Lot 26, number 14/240 Mill Point Road, South Perth. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a change of use from multiple dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation on lot 26, number 14/240, Mill Point Road, South Perth. The item is referred to Council as the proposed land use falls outside of the delegation to officers. For the reasons outlined in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillors, any questions on this item? No. Welcome, Councillor Choi. We're just moving on to item 10.3.4. Mr Bradford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 10.3.4, proposed change of use multiple dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation, lot 3/45 Mary Street, Como. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a change of use from a multiple dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation on lot 3/45 Mary Street, Como. The item is referred to Council as the proposed land use falls outside of the delegation to officers. For the reasons outlined in the report, it is recommended the application be approved subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Welcome, Councillor Cridlin. We're up to 10.3.2. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Navard. Oh, 4, sorry. What did I say? 2. My bad. 10.3.4. Councillor Navard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just wondering about the conditions that might be wrapped around 10.3.4 Lot 3 Mary Street, given the evidence of some previous conditions not being readily met.
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So there was a previous development application that's been approved at the site. It's not that those conditions haven't been complied with. That application came before council after the site was being used for short-term rental accommodation without prior approval. Once they've received development approval, they've been complying with the conditions of development approval. The issues that some of the neighbours had with the use of the property related to the car parking. And so you can see on page 30 of the agenda, as part of this application, the city has undertaken analysis of on-site car parking to ensure that there's no cumulative impact of car parking as a result of all of the different units within the complex being used for unhosted short-term rental accommodation. And that demonstrates that there's a surplus of car parking bays. And so we're satisfied that it can be approved.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Navard.
I was just wondering about the dilapidated condition that was showing, and I wondered if there was anything that could... Is that the one with the broken fences? I just wondered about that too.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So unfortunately, there's no need and nexus between the use of the accommodation for short-term rental accommodation and fixing a broken fence. That's a civil matter between the landowners that needs to be resolved under the Dividing Fences Act.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Any further questions on this item, councillors? No. Next item, please, Mr Bradford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 10.3.5, proposed change of use multiple dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation, lot 4/45 Mary Street, Como. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a change of use from a multiple dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation on lot 4/45 Mary Street, Como. The item is referred to council as the proposed land use falls outside of the delegation to officers. For the reasons outlined in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Navard.
Obviously the question is the same. I just wanted to clarify that, you know, the concerns I had with the other would also apply to this one. That's all. Thank you.
All right, Ms Shaw, I assume it's the same answer?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Any further questions on this item, councillors? Nope. Next item, please, Mr Bradford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 10.3.6, proposed change of use, single house to unhosted short-term rental accommodation, lot 800, number 16D, Greenock Avenue, Como. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a change of use from a single house to unhosted short-term rental accommodation on lot 800, number 16D, Greenock Avenue, Como. The item is referred to council as the proposed land use falls outside of the delegation to officers. For the reasons outlined in the report, it is recommended the application be approved, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillors, Councillor Navard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Once again, the fact that this particular property raised concerns by residents in the same block, and I was once again wondering to what extent we'll have any control over the unhappy state if that should happen.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So my understanding is that you're referring to some of the concerns raised in the submissions to do with the upkeep of the landscaping surrounding the property. Is that correct? Yes. So again, that's not something that's relevant to the unhosted short-term rental accommodation from a planning perspective, but Section 325 of the Local Government Act provides the ability for the local government to undertake compliance action where there's an untidy property, which includes overgrown weeds. The matter was raised with the applicant, who has advised that they will undertake regular maintenance of the property now that they're aware of the concerns.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Any further questions, councillors? No. Next item, please, Mr Bradford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 10.3.7, proposed change of use, group dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation, Lot 1, number 1/22, Anstey Street, South Perth. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a change of use from a grouped dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation on Lot 1, number 1/22, Anstey Street, South Perth. The item is referred to Council as the proposed land use falls outside of the delegation to officers. For the reasons outlined in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillors, any questions on this item? No. Next item, please, Mr Bradford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 10.3.8, proposed change of use, grouped dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation, Lot 4, number 4/22, Anstey Street, South Perth. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a change of use from a grouped dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation on Lot 4, number 4/22, Anstey Street, South Perth. The item is referred to Council as the proposed land use falls outside of the delegation to officers. For the reasons outlined in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillors, Councillor Choi.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I notice on page 60 of the report of the agenda, in the officer's report, that the Council of Owners has submitted written confirmation of their support for this proposed change of use. And I notice that that's different in terms of the same paragraphs in all of the other preceding proposed change of use for unhosted short-term rental accommodation, that they stated that they have no objection to the unit operating as an unhosted STRA. Is there a difference? Is there a reason why this has been written that way? I'm just wondering.
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, there's no difference. The reports were prepared by different officers. Yep.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Any further questions, councillors? No. Next item, please, Mr Bradford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 10.3.9, E-Quote 16/2024, cleaning of stormwater drains and other services. This report considers submissions received from the advertising of E-Quote 16 of 2024 for the cleaning of stormwater drains and other services. The report outlines the assessment process used for the evaluation of E-Quotes received and recommends approval of the submission that provides the best value for money and level of service to the city. And I note there is a confidential attachment to this item.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillors, any questions for this item? Nope. Next item, please, Mr Bradford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 10.4.1, listing of payments October 2024. This report presents to Council a list of accounts paid under delegated authority between 1 and 31 October 2024 for information. It also includes purchase card transactions between 1 September and 30 September 2024 in line with the new legislative requirements.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillors, Councillor Choi.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I noticed in the listing of payments, there's, I think it's around $7,500 towards the park runs, getting that set up on the foreshore. I'm just wondering, is that going to be recouped that cost at any point, or is that just something that the city's contributing towards that, hosting that event and getting it established?
Ms Shaw, is that you?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. It's part of the grant funding in the payment to Parkrun. So we're assisting the organisation in setting up a parkrun along the South Perth foreshore. We're expecting to commence in January.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, any further questions on this item? No. Next item, please, Mr Bradford.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 10.4.2, monthly financial statements, October 2024. The monthly financial statements are provided within the attachments A through I, with a high level of analysis contained in the comments of the report.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillors, any questions on this item? Nope. Okay. In that case, that winds up item 10. We move on to item 12, which is motions of which previous notice has been given. That's nil for this evening. Councillor Choi.
Thanks,
Question?
Mr Mayor. Sorry, before you moved on to that item number, I'm just wondering, because I missed item 10.1.1, but I do actually have a declaration of interest for that one. Can I make that now, or do I need to make that ahead of the next meeting?
No, you can make that now if you want.
Oh, thanks.
Far away.
It's just an impartiality interest that some of the nominees are known to me. That's all.
All right, thank you. Have we got that governance? Great. All right. Jumping back to item 15 then, which is meeting closed to the public. This is where we would close the meeting to the public if there was any reason to do so, but there's not, so we won't. Which brings us to item 16, which is closure. So before I close the meeting, I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation. I declare the meeting closed at 16 minutes past 6. Thank you all, and good night.